Can you survive until search and rescue comes and gets you? Hey everyone, welcome to another cozy fireside chat with me and Charlie Foxtrot, Mike Victor uniform. I was watching a video earlier this week put out by Pilot Annie. She's got a YouTube channel. She does a lot of stuff on Instagram. She flies out of an airport maybe an hour northwest of here, Collingwood. Puts out some great stuff. And so she did something where she pulled apart her brand new survival kit. And it got me thinking, I need to audit both my survival kit, but also sort of my own planning in my head of could I survive a crash in a remote wilderness area? I don't much think about it in southern Ontario, sort of that area from Ottawa to Windsor, north to, say, Muskoka or Parry Sound. Most of where I fly is paved. I mean, it's, southern Ontario, it's paved. But you get out into that wilderness area, you get out into northern Ontario or northern Quebec, where I was flying in the middle of last summer, and it becomes a real question of, okay, you've crashed, you've survived the crash. Can you survive until search and rescue comes and gets you? And I think that's a question that every pilot needs to ask, especially, if you're flying in remote areas. It's a question that I ask all the time as I'm flying. When I'm flying VFR, I'm always looking out the window to see where I can land. And a couple of times I've run into an emergency situation where I needed to turn around and land quickly. We'll get into that. But before I ever reach into the plane to pull out the survival bag, before I get in the car to even come to the airport, that's where survival training starts. Have you done first aid training? Do you have a valid first aid certificate? Have you done, basic first aid training, or have you done sort of more trauma-based first aid training? I think those are, things that you need to consider, things that you should have. I have them, but I'm due for a refresher course. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go and do a refresher course and sort of bring myself back up, remind myself of all the things that I've forgotten. Have you ever done survival training? Wilderness survival training. If you're going to fly over wilderness, that's something you should think about. So as much as I worked in film my entire adult life, I took forestry at university. And as part of the forestry program, we did survival training, and we also did trauma training for first aid. And that was a big part of the university course. And then when I worked through the summers and after university for the pulp and paper companies, survival training and sort of emergency trauma training was part of your daily life at these companies. You had to do it on a regular basis, on a regular schedule. And I'm really glad that I did. But I could also do another wilderness survival training course. I think that would kind of bump myself back up again. These are perishable skills. These are things that you need to practice on an ongoing basis. So, as a pilot, have you done either of those things? Where do you stand in sort of that training? And I think that's something, before you ever get to an accident situation, I think that's something you need to think about. Also, before you ever get in the car and come out, you have to, are you considering weather conditions? It's minus 25 outside today. Beautiful blue sky, blue sunny sky day, but it's minus 25. We've had a lot of snow over the last little while. And if you were to go out flying today and flying in a wilderness area, are you dressed appropriately? I don't always put on a big bulky jacket when I'm flying, but it's on the seat beside me. Are you wearing long johns? Do you have boots on? I know for a lot of people, shorts and flip-flops are their brand. But, on a cold day at the end of January, beginning of February, might not be such a good idea. Are you dressed for the weather that you might crash in? I think that's important. What are some other considerations before you even come? Did you file a flight plan? In the summertime, if I'm flying to Chris's, which is, a 40-minute flight, I don't file a flight plan. If I'm going to Wyerton for lunch, I'm not filing a flight plan. I'm filing a flight itinerary, which in Canada means You've told a responsible person when you're leaving, where you're going, the route you're taking, and what time you're supposed to arrive. And if you don't arrive at that time, they know the number to call to alert authorities that you've gone missing. But a flight plan, especially in the wintertime, especially over wilderness terrain, have your flight plan and stick to it. That is important. The best way for search and rescue to find you is to know where you are. What was that? Am I having an emergency in the hangar? The beeping was one of my lights. So you've got your first aid training, you've done backcountry wilderness survival training, you've filed your flight plan, you're dressed appropriately for the weather, you're getting in the plane, you take off and away you go. Fantastic. So again, some of this information I have in different columns depending on where I'm flying. If I'm flying over the paved Southern Ontario industrial area of Canada, I'm going down in somebody's street, I'm going down in somebody's farm, I'm always close to somebody. But my mindset changes when I go farther north, when I go farther away from civilization, when I'm going farther away from where people are going to be able to rescue me. Twice in the, 25 years or more of me being a pilot, I have run into trouble. And so let's talk through some of the things that I think really help me in those situations. Pilots seem to be notoriously bad for getting on the radio and saying, I've got a problem. If you've got a problem, get on the radio with air traffic control and tell them that you've got a problem. Even when I'm just flying VFR and I haven't asked for radar surveillance or flight following if you're in certain parts of the world, I'm monitoring their frequency, and I have their frequencies written out so I know which frequency to change to along my route so that I can get in touch with air traffic control. I'm on guard 121.5 pretty much all the time as well. And then I'm also on the common frequency in Canada, which is 126.7, which is, just filled with garbled masses of pilots making position reports. I have the capability of listening to 4 channels at once in this aircraft. So I've usually got those 3 on, maybe one of them turned down a little bit so I don't need to talk to it all the time. But if you run into trouble, call it out. Call air traffic control and say, pan, 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 or maybe don't call pan, 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 don't call Mayday, but let them know, I've got a bit of a problem. Twice I've done that. Once was in a rental aircraft, probably, almost 20 years ago. I was a brand new pilot, smoke in the cabin, electrical fire, pan, pan, pan. Immediately, air traffic control comes back. What do you need? Let us get you where you need to go. Closest airport. They're looking at you on the radar. They're helping you out. They're smoothing the way forward. Landed. Everything was okay. It was some wiring that had shorted out. Anyway, everything was fine. But I'm really glad that I let air traffic control know that. The second time was in Mike Victor uniform. There's an AD for this aircraft because of the plumbing, of the way the plumbing comes down from the wing tanks. You can get vapor lock, turbulent fuel, you get a bubble, and then no fuel comes through, starves the engine of fuel. That happened to me. I was at, 5,500 to 6,500 feet, called the pan, pan, pan. After I called the pan, 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 air traffic control was like, do you need any help? And I was over top of a grass strip that I figured I could just circle down to. I just wanted them to know that I might have a problem. I went through all of the emergency procedures, cleared the problem, got the plane running. They directed me to Arama Airport. I landed, and they asked me to call them after I landed. When they give you a number, it's not to admonish you. They're there to help. Don't fear calling out an emergency to air traffic control. They are there to help. When I landed, I called. The guy just wanted to debrief me and make sure that I was mentally okay. Can I call somebody? Do you need someone to come to the airport to give you a hand? Do you need somebody to come to the airport just to give you a hug? And 3 days later, that controller called me on my phone just to make sure mentally I was okay. You're not going to get in trouble for calling an emergency. And the earlier you call an emergency, if something goes horribly wrong, the earlier search and rescue is coming towards you. Which leads to the next thing. Equipped with an ELT. I see a lot in forums and online and in Facebook, and when you get together with other pilots, they talk about how the ELT is useless because when you crash, what if you knock off the aerial and it can't transmit? And my comeback always is, why are you waiting for your plane to crash before you turn on the ELT? Why are you waiting for the plane to crash for it to automatically turn on? Why are you not, when you declare an emergency, reaching over to the button on your panel, which is right there on mine, and turning it on in the air at 6,000 feet or 7,000 feet? That calls out immediately. I didn't do it in the two that I spoke about earlier because it never got to that point. But if the engine cuts out and I'm going down, I'm pressing that button no matter where I am in the sky, because again, the earlier that you light up somebody's screen, in this case, I'd probably be Trenton, search and rescue in Trenton, light up their screen and let them know that you're in trouble and they can follow you to your final destination. Maybe not final destination, but to the ground. So then when you hit the ground and you knock off the antenna and it can no longer transmit, they followed you all the way to the ground. They know where you are and they can immediately send somebody out. And especially if you're in talking to air traffic control, they're going to be able to direct search and rescue to you because they've talked to you all the way down. That's before we ever reach inside to get the pack out. That is of last resort. That is your last resort. So these are all things that I think about while I'm flying. These are things that I think about as survival, in survival mode before I get the pack out. All of the survival training that I took in university and afterwards working for the pulp and paper companies it's different because this is an airplane, but their focus was, you've got a pickup truck. You're probably in a pickup truck. It's a giant resource. There's stuff in the truck that you can use. There's fuel in the truck that you can start a fire with. But if your plane crashes and you are able to get out, this is a giant resource. There's all kinds of things in the cabin that aren't part of my survival bag, but are in the cabin that I'm able to use. I've got a backup handheld radio. There's flashlights. There is a full toolkit. So I've got a full toolkit with wrenches and screwdrivers and all of that sort of thing. And the first aid kit. Not sponsored. This is made by Nanook. Nanook is a Canadian company that makes these hard cases. And I have used their hard cases on set for, a long time. And about a year ago, I went to their site to pick up another hard case to put some lenses in and found out that they make ready-made survival kits and first aid kits. This is one of their first aid kits. I've got 2 first aid kits in the plane. And so beginning of March, I'm actually going to do a tour of their factory outside of Montreal. So you've got all these other resources that aren't part of your survival kit, but you have to think of everything. When you go into survival mode, what can you use? I mean, if the plane isn't too badly crumpled, it's your shelter as well. You'd think of your plane as your shelter before you even get to the point of, pulling out a tarp and making all kinds of other things. This is your shelter. There's always fuel in the tanks, fire starter. Now we get to the survival kit. Okay, like I said, before you ever get into your survival pack, think of the things that are in your aircraft. So already in my aircraft, and this is not a complete list, I have a Garmin InReach. There is a handheld radio. There are flashlights. There are signal flares. In the wintertime, I have an avalanche shovel in the aircraft. There's always a couple of liters of oil. Oil is great, not for starting a fire, but for keeping a fire going if you really needed to in wet weather. There's tie-down ropes. There's a full toolkit, and in the toolkit has all kinds of different little spares, spare spark plugs, locking wire. I have a roll of locking wire in my toolkit that can be used for all kinds of different things. Tie-down ropes as well as other lengths of rope in the back. What else do I have? Oh, water. I always, when I'm flying fair distance, I always have extra water. I have an actual full, let me get it. If I don't show it, people don't believe it exists. Scepter can. This is always full of water when I go. I don't leave it in the plane because obviously in the wintertime it would freeze solid and it would be useless. So I will carry water as I need it. And in the summertime, I usually take it fresh for every trip. These scepter cans are amazing. I also carry, let me get, again, if I don't show it, doesn't exist. Again, this is a scepter can. This is for fuel. I carry 3 of these if I'm going to more remote places because you never know if I've gotten to places thinking I was going to get fuel and they hadn't notammed that they didn't have fuel, and you don't know until you get there. So I'll carry these full. These are made here in Canada. I think maybe we'll try and get a factory tour for the military. They're also made for the US. They're made for militaries around the world here in Toronto. And we can buy them in Canada off the shelf. But for some reason, you're not allowed to sell them to the public in the United States. I don't know what that's all about. Absolutely amazing. You could drop this, from a fair distance and it's not going to crack open. It's not going to leak. So I carry these, one for water and one for fuel. If you were watching the videos last summer on the flights over Northern Ontario and into Manitoba, this sat on the seat beside me. I was flying by myself, so the seat beside me, easy to access. Like I said, flying around here in Southern Ontario, it's in the back compartment. It's in the baggage compartment. It is waterproof. This is a great bag. Mountain Equipment Co-op. Not sponsored, but if they wanted to, I'm willing. Same with Scepter. So I haven't looked in this bag in a little while. So this is part of my audit. As I've been sort of stream of consciousness talking out loud about what I think is important for survival, we're going to open this up. We're going to look inside and I'm going to take stock of what's in here and see what I need to change. So off the top, leather gloves, really important. These, you get in the bush, you're already in rough shape and you don't want to rip up your hands cutting wood. Some utensils. Another first aid kit. This one stays in here, never gets opened. Well, I shouldn't say it never gets opened. It gets opened at annual so that I can look through it and make sure that everything is still okay and nothing's expired. Canned fish. I really like canned fish and it's full of energy. So I've got a couple of things of canned fish. Realistically, 72 hours. And you know that search and rescue is, if you have followed along and done all of the things that you need to do and search and rescue knows where to find you, it's not going to take them 72 hours to get there. Milk. Shelf-stable milk, some more fish. This is just for my own mental health. I like tea and I like milk in my tea. So it's just there for my mental health. More fish. I love fish. Another pair of gloves in case I have a passenger with me. Julie comes down with me. This is fire starting. So, as we already touched on, there's fuel in this aircraft. No matter what happens, you're going to be able to get fuel out of the aircraft if you need to start a fire. As long as the plane doesn't catch on fire on the way down or after it lands. Small aircraft like this, the chance is pretty slim that that's going to happen, but it could happen. And if that happens, everything I'm saying is moot because you're in bigger trouble. So this is lint, dryer lint, and some of it is waxed. There's also a candle inside. Candles and dryer lint for starting a fire. Absolutely amazing. Waterproof matches, and then this is another fire starter kit. And it has flint. Let me get it open. It has a flint starter as well as these little cotton waxed fire starter things. So I'm covered for starting fire. Pretty sure I'm covered for starting fire. And I'm sure that there's more in here for starting fire because redundancy is important, but you also have to cut to a point where you've got enough. You know, is 3 things too much redundancy? How much weight can you carry for a pack? This one, I've got it marked on the top, is 21 pounds. If you're flying a smaller aircraft, 21 pounds on a survival pack is probably way outside of what you can do. Just weight-wise, even volume-wise or size-wise. A couple of emergency bivy sacks. A full-size sleeping bag's not going to fit in here, but I often travel with a sleeping bag and a tent in the plane. They're in the plane, they're usable. Got some, is this butane? Is it butane or iso? It is isobutane. So, can of isobutane for a couple of jet boils. I've got 2 of them, just in case. 2 pots, love tea. Some freeze-dried meals, as well as the fish. I will eat the fish before I eat the freeze-dried meal. This is if we go past 72 hours. So I've got 3 of those. There might be another one in here. Tea bags and sugar for a cup of tea. Mental health. Totally for my mental health. 9-hour candles. So there's 3 9-hour candles in here. The plane is filled with flashlights and lights and stuff like that. These are also great for giving heat in the wintertime. A signaling mirror. You know, if Boy Scouts, if you see a C-130 or a Griffin helicopter coming to look for you, this is great for signaling them where you are. The flash of light is really bright off of this. Also for signaling the aircraft are these strobe lights that I've got. So in the pack, strobe lights, but there's also strobe lights on the webbing behind my seat. Also on the webbing behind my seat are some knives, because you never know when you're going to need a knife. More waterproof matches in a waterproof container. Bug dope. You go down in northern Ontario, northern Quebec, you go down in the bush, anywhere in Canada, this is very important. Bug dope. A whistle. Pretty low tech, but very important. Great way to signal people. Another battery operated flare. I changed the batteries in these every annual. Change the batteries every annual, and just behind the passenger seat is a jug of AA batteries. Very important to have spare batteries. These are useless if the battery is dead, and they don't have USB charging. So AA's, you can find AA's everywhere around the world. They're easy to replace. They're inexpensive, and I've got a whole jug of them just in case. Another candle. This is called a siege stove. It's made from titanium, and it folds down. You put it together, and you get heat and someplace to cook. and it uses very little fuel, and you can just use the tiniest little sticks to get it going and keep it going. I got this from a prepper website. Use the prepper website at your own peril. Saw. Wait. Press the button so that I can open it up. It's cold. A saw for cutting brush, cutting sticks, making shelter, fuel for your fire. A tiny little shovel. These come in really handy. As part of our survival training at university, we did winter survival. We would build quinzies. So quinzee is you take as much snow as you can from all over the place around you, and I would use the shovel that I have. Where is it? It's back in there somewhere. So I would take my avalanche shovel and I would build a dome out of snow, a big pile of snow. And when you tumble snow together like that, because the snow is stratified at different temperatures when it's sitting on the ground, when you tumble it all together, it evens out in temperature and it becomes almost an ice block. And so then you go in with a tiny little trowel like this and you carve yourself an opening inside this dome of snow. It's kind of like a quickie, no skill igloo. You're out of the wind. It actually warms up really nicely inside. It warms up really quickly with a couple of candles inside. Easy shelter in the wintertime. I don't want to have to ever do it again, but I know how to do it. Another knife, another signal mirror, and this knife also has a flint for starting a fire. So another way to start a fire. What have I got? Like dozens of ways to start fires. Parachute cord. In addition to the tie-down ropes that I have inside, this parachute cord is fantastic for pulling together some shelter. There's 2 tarps back here. I've got a bin in the extended baggage compartment that has 2 tarps in it. I probably should get a small tarp now that I've seen it and put it in here so that when I pull this bag out, we're ready to go. This is a water purification kit. So I'm carrying this. This is 10 liters of water. That's a lot of water. For whatever reason, I can't get it out of the plane, but I can get this kit out. This is a full water purification kit. So it's a filter, but there's also those tablets. I hate those tablets. It makes your water taste horrible. But do what you got to do when you got to do it. It never goes back in as nicely as it comes out. So, I've got a couple of thoughts about what I should add in here. The difficult part of this is all the what ifs. What if, what if, what if, what if. And you could drive yourself nuts with the what ifs. And you could have, 150 or 200 pounds worth of gear in your survival bag. Trying to think of all the what ifs. And that becomes kind of a dangerous game because then you start to psych yourself out. You're not thinking straight anymore. And realistically, there's only so much you can fit in a pack. You have to be able to get it out of the plane. You have to make decisions based on how much weight that you can carry in your plane. If you're flying a Vans RV, whatever, you probably don't have this much space and you probably don't have this much allowance for weight. And those are 2, very real considerations when you're flying an aircraft. Size and weight. Maybe with the new Vans RV15, you could put a little bit more in, but that's, time will tell. Also, in the past, when I've talked about this, people have said, "Oh, you should have it in a knapsack so that you can put it on your back and walk to safety." If you don't want to survive, put it in a knapsack and walk to safety. Depending on where you are, there is no walk to safety. That's an impossible idea. Doesn't exist. You go down in southern Ontario, yeah, you can walk to safety because you can probably walk to the nearest farmhouse. You could, you'll see it. There's a road. You go down in the bush. There's no walking to safety. There is no walking to safety. You're going to be hundreds of kilometers from anywhere. You are going to be far from the nearest road. Just walking through the bush is going to be incredibly difficult. And guess what? Search and rescue is looking for a crashed airplane. If you're not with the crashed airplane, it's just going to take them longer to find you. All of my survival training was stay with the vehicle, if that's a pickup truck or the plane. So let me know. Let me know what you would pack. Let me know where you fly, because what you would pack is completely different if you were flying, say, in Australia or South Africa. You would have a completely different set of needs based on climate, weather, etc., etc. I don't carry fishing hooks or fishing lures or anything like that in my survival kit. All of my survival training, they all said the same thing. You're not going to catch anything meaningful. You're not really going to provide yourself with sustenance. You might provide yourself with a brain break. Take your mind off the fact that you are in survival mode. I've got enough food in here for 72 hours. And there's also always food in the plane. If I'm flying a long leg, there's sandwiches, there's power bars, there's cookies, there's all kinds of other things that are always in the plane that aren't part of the survival bag. There is a case to be made for a gun. There's a case to be made for bear spray or a bear banger. Leave your thoughts down below. And tell me what you think. Tell me what you would add. Tell me what you would take away. Tell me what you carry in your aircraft. And hopefully the next flight will be flying. See you soon.